to show you how to sharpen a curved gouge. The stone that I have here is a diamond stone. This is an 8,000 grit diamond stone. If you have something like an Arkansas stone or India stone or water stones or anything else, that's fine. Use whatever stones that you have. I used to use the Arkansas stone, and then I started using diamond stones a couple years ago, and it just seemed to me that it was very aggressive, but it actually created a very smooth, shiny finish. But any stone that you have, you don't have to go out and spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on a new sharpening system. Whatever stone that you have, you want to have the finest possible grit to do this final, really to have that fine finish in order to keep this razor sharp. So whatever you have, you want to keep it as fine as possible. Now if I have a lot of metal to remove, I start out with a rougher stone like a 1200 grit, and then I move to this for the final sharpening. But the same process, same technique, I just move from one stone to the other. And I'm going to start taking the tool and rocking it to the point where I can feel a flat. Alright, and then I want to lock my hand. Alright, if you just look at the arm movement, the only thing that's actually really twisting right now, very subtly, my wrist is moving. My elbow is locked to the side, and then I'm actually moving my hips back and forth. Alright, if I didn't do that, and I just moved like that, there's a real possibility of it sort of going lopsided and not a lot of control. Okay, if I just move it back and forth, and so the only part that's possibly turning or twisting is my wrist. Okay, so when I start moving the tool, I'm rotating it to cover the whole length of the edge. Okay, now if I turn it too much, or if I twist it too much, what's going to happen is those corners are going to round over. I'm going to lose that nice sharp corner. Now if I don't turn it enough, then what's going to happen is the inside here is going to be hollowed out, and the points, there's going to be these 2 points sticking up. So you want to make sure that you're covering the whole back surface and the whole edge. Now what I want to be looking at when I turn the tool over is I want to make sure that I'm not just hitting the tip or just hitting the base here. I want to make sure that it's hitting the whole back surface, because I want to keep this a flat surface from this point all the way to the tip. Okay, now you do that for about 20 hours or so. Just kidding, just kidding. Actually, that was the first time I sharpened something. It took that long because I had this thickness of metal on, and I had a black Arkansas stone, and yeah, I think that was one of my teacher's challenges. So here, take this home and bring it back sharpened. So I was so determined, and I did, and I still have that tool today. Never use it because I don't want to have to resharpen it again. Alright, now I want to do this until I get a little metal burr along the inside edge. And it may take a little while depending on how much you really have to remove. It depends on the stone you're using. So it just, you may have to spend, I mean right now my average probably is maybe 15-20 minutes per tool if I really use the tool a lot. But it's actually sped up a lot since I started using diamond stones. Okay, once you get there's a little burr along the inside edge, then I want to take the slipstone. Here's 3 different shapes of stones that I have. This one is a sort of an oval shape. This is a round shape, and this is for my V-chisel. This is one that I actually made from a broken piece of a sharpening stone, Arkansas stone that I had lying around. So you can customize your stones also. Now these were actually larger, but they've broken and fallen off my bench and ended up in many pieces. So you end up getting more stones that way. Very lightly run it along the inside edge of the tool. Now I want to be careful to keep it as flat as possible. I'm basically going to be running it along the curvature where the manufacturer has developed. If there's a little bit of a bevel on the inside, which should just slight curve down, just have to pretty much follow that so that the stone itself will hit the edge of the tool. What you don't want to do is actually angle it like that and create an extra bevel in there. Now I've spoken to some people who do that all the time. They actually create a bevel on the inside, and there are uses for that. For instance, if you're going to be doing a lot of work where you're going to be using the tool upside down like that and rounding over, it allows you to lift the tool a little bit higher off the wood. Okay, but generally, for the type of work that I like to do, is I like to keep it as flat as possible. All right, but that's why you need many, many chisels, so you can have some with the bevel on the inside and some without. That's why you need your 300 chisels. You can't have too many. All right. Now the next, then what I want to do, okay, at that point the little burr was flipped over to the other side. Then I put it back on the stone and go back and forth, inside and the outside. And you may have to do this, I don't know, 5, 6, 10 times, back and forth, depending on how large the burr is. Okay, go back. Until that entire burr along that edge is gone. If you look right at the edge, if you see any sort of light reflection on the edge, and that's usually a remaining burr. But I think at this point we're ready to go to the strop. This is a leather strop, and this is just one that I made. It's a piece of thick leather, and I put some silicone carbide powder on the front of it, or the rough side. And what I did was I put a little bit of oil on the back and let it set in, and then sprinkled the powder on top of it, and that held the powder. Otherwise it would be flying all over. And silicone carbide powder is not the nicest thing to breathe. But you can use any kind of sharpening compound, anything that you would use on a sharpening wheel, a buffing wheel, anything. I mean, you can get it at Lowe's, you can get it just at any hardware store. Anything that you would rub on to a buffing wheel, you can put on this. In fact, you can even use just the leather itself. Okay, now I'm locking my wrist so I don't do this. Alright, I don't want to tip the tool or change the angle of the tool. I want to keep the angle of the tool straight. Okay. Alright, so you do this for a while until you get a nice shiny back surface. Now if I just had this as a strop, I would turn it over and just drag it across to do the inside. Just wrap it around my finger. Not really efficient. I can't press very hard. It's also very dangerous because, you know, if I come close to my hand, it's you're getting a very sharp tool close to your fingers. But I also have, this is something that I made. It's got a couple different curves, different shaped curves, and a V-chisel. And what I have done is I put leather on top of it and the jeweler's rouge, or polishing compound on top of that, and this way I can really press hard on it. Okay, and again, I want to be careful I don't do that and actually change the angle. Just want to take it and drag it as straight back as possible, but I want to make sure that I cover the whole inside edge. Alright, now at this point that should be a pretty sharp tool. Okay, and there's a few ways you can check it. I like to take and run it along basswood across the grain, and if it rips or if you can see any tearing in the wood, you just have to go back to the stone. But anyway, it's a really, there's many different ways that I've seen people sharpen gouges, but this has always been the way that works for me. It's kept it consistent, and there's all sorts of machines you can use too, but there's been a lot of people trying to convince me to, oh, you gotta try this, you gotta try that. Like, you know what, I'm quite comfortable just taking the time, sharpening the tools, loving the tools. I guess I'm kind of strange. But one thing I do not like to do is use a polishing wheel to sharpen. I have noticed, I have friends of mine who are professional carvers who do that all the time. That's the only way that they sharpen the tools. And it really ends up being more for speed than anything. But what it does is it sort of rounds everything over, and it loses the definition of a lot of the tools, and it also ends up rounding the back side over, which causes you to really have to sort of dig when you're carving. Instead of with a flat back like that, what it allows you to do is really take it across the wood like that and use it as if it's a planer. I'll tell you what, when you discover what it is like to carve with a really nice sharp tool, oh, you would be happy spending hours and hours and hours sharpening your tools just so you can get that experience of it just singing through the wood.